Hi guys. So today we're going to be seeing what is the most optimal way to win at tic-tac-toe instantly. So usually when you start a game of tic-tac-toe, you place an X somewhere on the board, right? And then your opponent randomly responds with something. Usually they just go ahead with it randomly. They don't put a thought into it and they place it anywhere. What we can do is we can see what is the possibility of you getting an instant win from them playing randomly. So first, let's look at this board of tic-tac-toe. It has 9 squares, so naively we can say that there will be 9 factorial different games of tic-tac-toe, right? But this is absolutely wrong because this board we can classify it as a dihedral group of D4, which means that since this is sort of like a square, right? It has 4 sides, they are equal in length. We can classify this as a dihedral group of D4, which means that it has symmetry, reflection, and rotation. So what this means is that what I can do is that multiple games which might start from different blocks, they might actually end up being the same game. So I'll draw 2 boards here. And then let's start off with this game. Suppose I place this. This is the first move, second move, third move, fourth move. There you go. And then the fifth move. So now let this be game 1. Now if I have a second game, so now I will make sort of a different looking game. This one started with the 7th square. Now I can start it with the 3rd square. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now this might look as 2 different games, right? But in reality, these 2 are the exact same games. Because if you look at this board, if you sort of try and imagining it rotating, and if you rotate it by 180 degrees, this is the exact same board as this one. So if you rotate this clockwise by 180 degrees, you get this board. And then same goes, if you rotate this board anti-clockwise by 180 degrees, you will get this board. So effectively, multiple games of tic-tac-toe can be classified as the same one because they are just reflections of each other. So this helps reduce this count. And then also, there is the symmetry and the reflection thing. So what we can do is we can take a tic-tac-toe board and we can try and figure out its axis of symmetry. So this is just going to be very general. You have this axis, you have this axis, and then you have the diagonals. And that's all the axis of symmetry. Now if you look at it, this goes through each and every square of the board, right? It goes through all the different edges, E1, E2, E3, E4, and then it also goes through all 4 corners, C1, C2, C3, and C4. And then they all sort of go through the middle every single time. So we can call this the middle, M. So since we saw in the before example that it doesn't matter which square you start from, eventually with rotation, you can sort of classify it as the same game. We can try and create different groups from this. So we can have our group 1, and then this we can help be our edges. There are 4 different edges and then we compress it into one singular group. And then same goes with corners. 4 corners compressed into one group. And then we can have our middle group as well. So effectively, there are only 3 different openings of tic-tac-toe, even though there might seem that there are 9. So this helps reducing the amount of game trees that we will need. So what the main problem now is, we need to try and see we need to calculate the probability which maximizes the winning chance in the first move itself. So for this, what we can define is, we need to know what a fork is. So a fork is whenever there are 2 different game lines on the tic-tac-toe board, and then your win is basically guaranteed no matter what the opponent does. So it'll be something like this. Suppose I start from here, my opponent plays this, and then I play this, they play this. Now there are two different lines where I can possibly win, right? So this is a fork. It's when you have two different possible lines and then a win is inevitable for you. So we need to see what are the squares that your opponent will play which will allow you to induce a fork by force. So for that we can define a fatal move. So a fatal move will be a move out of all the moves which induces a fork by force. So we can define the probability of that. So we can do probability of a fatal move. This will be total fatal moves divided by your total playable moves. And then we need to calculate P of F for the edge, for the middle, for the middle, and for the corner. So for this, I'll just create a simple board here. Let's start off with the edges first. So since we know that the edges, these four edges are basically just one group, we can try and simplify the visualization of this by just starting it off by this square. This will help us take into factor all the different edges. So the total fatal moves here, if you can try and guess, are these. If your opponent plays in these squares, they lose instantly because you can allow a fork by force. Suppose I play here. What I can do is I can allow a fork by force. I'll just go here. They have to play here. And then now I have two lines, right? Same goes for the other squares. If I play it here, then I can play this here again. Same lines again. Now if I play here, and then I go here, they go here, again two lines. So what we're doing is we're trying to maximize the amount of forks we can get. And then the same goes for this square. However, if they play in any of these squares, there is no instant fork that is induced. Maybe there are forks in the future if your opponent plays really bad moves, but then you can't induce it by force. So what we can do is we have four different squares here which are fatal out of the complete 8 squares. So this becomes 4 over 8, which is equal to 50%. And then now let's look at the middle. So the middle is the move which people think is the best usually, right? Because it's right in the center, it goes through all the axes of symmetry. But what we can do is we can try calculating the fatal move for it again. So the fatal moves here are also 4. If your opponent plays in any of these squares, these are fatal moves. In any of the other ones, they are not fatal moves, they end in a draw with perfect play. Let me explain why. Suppose I play here, right? And then what will happen now is that, suppose I'll just go here. They have to play here. Two different lines. And then this is an instant fork. Suppose I go here. Same logic goes again. This is an instant fork too. However, if I go in any of the corners, this sort of blocks the logic you use to create a fork when you start in the center. So the logic for creating a fork whenever the opponent played with an edge was you create two in a line so that they are forced to play it here, and then you can create a fork using this diagonal and this diagonal, right? The logic in the middle is that you force your opponent to play in the edge and then you wrap your X around it so that they are forced to play in the corner, and you can open up one horizontal diagonal and one diagonal. So if you play it here, this sort of bans that diagonal, and then this is not a fatal move. So the same logic goes here. The probability of this will be 4 over 8 as well, which is 50%. Now let's go to the supposed best move. So now we have the probability of fatal moves in the corner. So the total fatal moves in this case is actually 7 different fatal moves. The only good move is the center here. All of these squares are fatal. And then the best part about playing in the corner is that you can induce multiple different types of forks. So suppose my opponent plays here, right? I can play this, they go here, they're forced to. This is one fork. Now a different variation of the fork. I start off with this, they're forced to play here. This is another fork as well. And then the same goes for other squares, not only that one corner square. Suppose my opponent starts off with this, then I can play this. They are forced to play here, and then again, that's a fork. And then there is another different way of making a fork. So there are multiple different ways you can create forks. However, there is obviously the center, which is the only securing case against the corner move. Suppose I play in the center. Now, so this is basically a little more advancing into the game tree, which can tend to be very complex. But this is a really special case because the best move here for you is to play here. But then your opponent still has a fatal move in this case, even after playing the perfect move in the center. So there are a total of 6 squares, and then there are actually 2 fatal moves here. If they play in any of the corners, it's an instant loss because it allows for a fork on the horizontals. So that was one, and then if they play here as well, same logic goes. So if we just look at the probability of them on the first move, this comes out to be 7/8, which is 87.5%. So now we basically know that if you want to maximize your chance of winning in the first move, definitely go with the center. It has the highest chance of you getting an instant win by inducing forks. However, one thing to notice in this is that tic-tac-toe is a very it's very fractured. So like there's a lot of different game branches, and then this just accounts into the first move and then the amount of forks you can sort of induce into it. One more thing is this also takes into account that the first move is random. So the logic behind this is that whenever you play your first move, your opponent's first move has a high chance of being completely random since there are no other squares on the board. However, as the game advances, them playing up their ability of playing a perfect move and not a random move increases as well because they can see different squares and then different threats, as there might be 2 in a line. So if you like this video, then please like, share and subscribe, and thanks for watching.